5 months after the Indo-Pakistani conflict, Pakistan and Afghanistan decide that the time is right to resume their historic border dispute. While Afghan Humvees drive along the roads to drop off Taliban fighters, Pakistani howitzers are active at the border, before escalating into an air raid over Kabul, which was struck on October 15. The violence of this clash is significant, but it's not the first time, nor will it be the last, that the two countries clash. Thus, the conflict is exacerbated by a long-standing border dispute over the Durand Line. Established in 1893 between the Emirate of Afghanistan and British Raj, this border at the time cut right through the Pashtun tribes. The problem is that the name Afghanistan literally means land of the Pashtuns. You see where I'm going with this. In 1947, the Raj disappeared. Pakistan appeared, but this border remained as it was, without Pakistan and Afghanistan reaching an agreement. This territorial ambiguity fuels mutual accusations and has led to regular clashes for decades. For the past 4 years, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan has normalized its relations with many of its neighbors. Do you remember one of the dedicated videos? But it considers the border with Pakistan as a weak spot to exploit. Welcome to Terabellum. So, you might wonder about the point of this video or even why talk about Pakistan, considering that the whole world is exploding. To make it short, the country borders Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, China, and India. Islamabad forms a link between Western Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia. Any power present in Pakistan is able to monitor and influence. It's no coincidence that Pakistan has played a crucial role in the famous global war on terror since 2001 for the United States, and it continues to be useful for maintaining pressure on Iran and China. If they don't get the Bagram air base in Afghanistan, which is likely, Pakistan may be more than willing to once again host the American military presence. With a direct view of the Sea of Oman, to control energy flows to China, remember the video about China, the country is part of the strategy to bypass the Strait of Malacca, and the United States will do everything to get involved. October 9, 2025, Pakistani drones strike Kabul. Islamabad's goal is to neutralize Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan leaders based in the Afghan capital. 2 will be eliminated as a result of these strikes. For those who haven't seen my first video on Pakistan, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan is a Pakistani Pashtun Taliban separatist group based in eastern Afghanistan. And the Afghan Taliban have always been accused by Islamabad of offering tacit support to the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, or at the very least, turning a blind eye to their operations. On October 10, 2025, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan retaliates with attacks, including one in northwest Pakistan that kills 23 people, mainly police forces, but also civilians. On October 11, 2025, Taliban fighters open fire on Pakistani security forces along the border. The clashes, the most intense since the Taliban returned to power in 2021, have just broken out. Both sides report significant losses. And of course, there is no verification of these claims, but we're probably talking about several hundred. The Pakistani counterattack follows. It then includes the use of tanks, fighter jets, drones, and artillery. Kabul is hit from the air once again. This is a significant escalation compared to previous skirmishes, which generally involves small arms and occasional artillery, like those good old British 25-pounders from the 1940s. Pakistan justifies the intensification of its operation, and especially the airstrikes inside Afghan territory, as being legitimate. In order to target the leadership of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, especially the notorious Nuru Ali Masood, the group's leader since 2018, who is accused by Pakistan of organizing the operational rise of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. A truce is then announced on October 15, before being broken by new Pakistani strikes on Afghanistan on October 18. But on Terabellum, I'm not here to read you a Wikipedia article, so let's get straight to the point. The relationship between the Afghan Taliban and the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan is a complex interaction of ideological and strategic affinities. Many senior Taliban leaders support the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, considering the group a key ally because of its historical role during the prolonged conflict against United States, led forces and Pakistani authorities between 2001 and 2021. They also share ideological solidarity with a common vision of the Islamic world centered around the Deobandi school and ethnic unity around the Pashtuns, who, although a majority in Pakistan, have dominated Afghanistan culturally and politically since the 18th century. Strategically now, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan provides the Taliban with an invaluable asymmetric tool, given the international context, to put pressure on Pakistan. This relationship allows the Taliban to indirectly influence Pakistan through a proxy force by leveraging insurgent attacks to counterbalance Pakistan's militarily superior capabilities. Officially, the Taliban reportedly relocated some Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan members and their families away from sensitive border areas at Pakistan's request. These measures have failed, as you can see, to put an end to the increasingly frequent and deadly Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan incursions into Pakistani territory. This indicates both the limits of Kabul's control over the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, but also a political will to fully control the group. The issue of the Taliban has existed since 2021, and in their exercise of power, should they respect the historic alliance with the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, with all that this implies for Pakistan? Or should they do more to curb cross-border conflicts, distance themselves from the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan in order to gain greater benefits, such as foreign investments, inclusion in international and especially Chinese projects, normalization of relations with their neighbors, and so on? This ambiguity is reflected in a cautious public stance on the Pakistani allegations, and their silence regarding the military presence in Kabul. And there is no doubt that this vision for the future of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan also differs, of course, from one Taliban official or leader to another, which adds even more to its opacity and, above all, its unpredictability. For its part, Pakistan considers the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan not only as a threat to its security, but also, and above all, as a symbol of the internal challenges that persist in Pakistan. Weakened by separatism, I'll refer you to the video on the collapse of Pakistan. At the time, we mainly dealt with Baluch separatism and clashes with Iran, while also painting a political and economic portrait of Pakistan. The resurgence of Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan attacks demonstrates the failure of previous anti-terrorist campaigns, which has prompted Islamabad to intensify its operations with more and more strikes deep inside Afghan territory. The Pakistani Army's use of fighter jets, drones, artillery, and the increasing number of airstrikes indicates a shift toward a more offensive strategy, still aimed at degrading the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan's leadership and operational infrastructure. However you doubt it, such operations involve a diplomatic blow and risk leading to a wider conflict with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, who is directly or indirectly responsible for this escalation through their ambiguous policy with the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. Yet Afghanistan remains an essential neighbor for Pakistan's regional strategy and economic stability, especially in its projects with China. This brings us back to geographical realism, which then determines policy. That's where the situation ends up at an impasse. The fact is that Pakistan, pulled from all sides along its borders, does not have the economic means to engage in a large-scale war against the Taliban. And in any case, there is no other credible political power in Afghanistan to effectively counterbalance the Taliban, and therefore the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. This puts Pakistan in a difficult situation where limited strategic prospects effectively restrict Pakistan's military options. They are limited to striking here and there to weaken the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan without being able to destroy it. The only viable long-term solution is diplomatic engagement with Afghanistan, with the support of intermediaries, in order to make the benefits of an Afghanistan-Pakistan partnership outweigh the demands of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. As if that wasn't enough, the escalation happened during the visit of the Afghan Taliban foreign minister to India, which added yet another layer to the geopolitical cake we've been observing since the beginning of this video. You can be sure that Islamabad has no interest in seeing India expand its influence in Afghanistan through closer ties with the Taliban, and that could risk extending the Afghan issue to the Indian issue, which in terms of power dynamics is not quite the same thing anymore. Once again, Pakistan's strikes are mainly focused on degrading the operational capability of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, but the lack of effective diplomacy with the Afghan emirate makes any crisis resolution or solution to security problems impossible. On top of that, it opens the door to Indian influence. And this has already started following the Indian strategy of controlling the waters of the Indus, which we saw a few months ago. Afghanistan announced on October 24 that it would begin building a similar dam to control the Kunar River, whose flow also joins the Indus. And so it has an impact on Pakistan's irrigation. However, Pakistan can rely on mediation efforts from several regional players, each pursuing common but distinct interests, to prevent a larger conflict that could destabilize South Asia and Central Asia. The first of these countries is Qatar, which has historically hosted the Taliban's political office in Doha and has frequently negotiated ceasefires and dialogues throughout the American operation in Afghanistan. In response to this escalation, Qatar has called for restraint and prioritized dialogue and diplomacy to prevent the conflict from worsening. Qatar has every interest in maintaining regional stability and especially in avoiding a conflict in Pakistan, since that would irreparably impact energy flows from the Gulf. Qatar, as we also saw in the video, mainly exists, and this is one of its strategies, through its role as a mediator between competing actors in the Muslim world. When you mention Qatar, Saudi Arabia is never far behind. We'll see this in an upcoming video that's being prepared. Mohammed bin Salman is gaining strategic maturity compared to the beginning of his reign. He combines religious diplomacy within the Sunni world with strategic defense ties, in particular with Pakistan, with which Riyadh signed a historic mutual defense agreement a few weeks ago, as Riyadh has every interest in supporting de-escalation, and that Pakistan is not distracted by other priorities besides its agreement with Saudi Arabia. Finally, there is China, whose interests in Pakistan stem from its overall strategy to ensure regional stability, protect its economic flows, and break American containment. China's long-standing mediation efforts between Afghanistan and Pakistan aim to maintain peace, which is essential for the success of its economic initiative. Beijing has a very simple proposal. Dialogue and de-escalation must prioritize economic and trade development. China must also prevent instability in the western Xinjiang region, which it is striving to achieve through growing political ties with the Afghan Taliban. And finally, there's the return of the United States. They continue to monitor this highly strategic area. Recent statements by President Trump express his willingness to serve as a mediator. The goal here is very simple: to regain the trust of Pakistan and establish new influence through economic or military projects. It's as much about monitoring the energy flows that pass nearby as it is about positioning themselves in this strategic country close to Iran, but also to counter or limit Chinese projects. The involvement of the United States also faces significant constraints, balancing international geopolitical ambitions with the need to effectively limit costs. However, Trump could have leverage if Pakistan also seeks to diversify its investments and find a counterbalance to Chinese proposals. We will now look at future prospects, and the situation suggests several conservative but plausible scenarios. The first is that of a prolonged low-intensity conflict, with repeated cycles of border skirmishes and intermittent ceasefires under the mediation of regional powers, but without truly solving the problems. The second is the creation by Pakistan of a buffer zone in eastern Afghanistan to contain attacks by the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. Such initiatives are always burdensome economically, militarily, and never without risk. This could even exacerbate tensions with the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan while also involving difficult diplomatic repercussions, since it would mean an illegal occupation of Afghan territory. Finally, diplomatic thaw could promote de-escalation and improved cooperation, including reducing the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. And the last and the worst scenario is the expanded regional conflict, where Pakistan would further intensify its military operations inside Afghanistan, and the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan would also step up its attacks. The conflict could spread, destabilize regional security, and exacerbate the divergent interests of China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and even India or the United States. The death of the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan leader could temporarily disrupt the group's operations, but it is unlikely to put an end to the threat. And in reality, there aren't 50 options. It will either be escalation or diplomacy, since geopolitics is also a matter of compromise. I hope this video has given you some keys to understanding the latent conflict between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and especially the consequences such a conflict could have in the region. In Qatar, the two belligerents agreed to a ceasefire, but now the fundamental issues need to be resolved. Which power will manage to get involved, and what place will it have in the game of great powers? Don't forget the simple gestures, like and share. Thanks to YouTube members for supporting this channel, and to everyone for your loyalty. This was Quentin for Therabellum. See you next time.